Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Barbara Etienne with Project Kin and delighted to be your host this morning for Emma Explores. Our guest, of course, our presenter is none other than Emma Cox on this wonderful series that takes us into Emma's own explorations of her family history. Emma, of course, is a professional genealogist and brings to us a polish and creativity to digging into their story. So with that, Emma, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thank you very much, Barbara. I'll just share my screen. Give me a moment. Let's start everything going. So hello, everybody, and welcome to another Emma Explores. We're coming up to our 2nd anniversary, so we will have to plan something with that, Barbara, in a couple of months' time. And today we're going to be talking about artists, sculptors and painters. So these are different people who basically are creative people. We've talked about writers in the past, and so this is a slightly different aspect of it and completely different people that you won't have met before. So for anybody who doesn't know anything about me, I'm based in England, family historian and genealogist, and I love helping people find out about their ancestors, putting together trees, investigating DNA, taking people on tours. I did one recently for a lady who came over from California. And we walked around London, 20,000 steps later, and saw some places her ancestors went. And I also host a podcast, Journeys into Genealogy, where I interview experts and people with interesting family stories. And if you've got one, let me know. So today, tracing artists, sculptors and painter ancestors. So there's a few examples there. I have to say that the beautiful stained glass at the top isn't one of mine, but I do have some really nice ones to show you in a little while. So they're going to be painters who worked in oils and watercolours, somebody who did stained glass, as I just mentioned, somebody who was a painter, sculptor, furniture designer, gilder and wood carver, busy man. Somebody who painted fairies. Now, you might think, well, I'm not quite sure about that. So these are not fairies for children, put it like that. Military portraits and paintings. And somebody who did horse paintings and, right at the end, a duck. So quite a different variety of people there. And amongst all of that lot, there are actually 3 generations of the same family. So obviously the talent went down the generations. And a connection with Australia as well. So we're going to start with John Anster Fitzgerald. Now, he is actually my first cousin 5 times removed, and he was born in 1819 and died in 1906. And this is a picture from his Wikipedia page. So he was quite famous in his time. Do this. And he was famous for fairy paintings, and he was actually known as Fairy Fitzgerald. So he was so famous for that. So quite an interesting name there. And his work is in the Tate Museum in London. And if you haven't heard of the Tate, it's one of the major museums in London. So he rates an entry there. And with all of these, I have put tons and tons of links. I won't necessarily go through all of them with the slides. They're in the slides and are there again at the end. So if you want to go and have a look at his profile on there, please do. And when I was doing this, I found lots of things like auctions where people's paintings or sculptures or whatever they'd created had been sold or are going to be sold in some instances. I've got some upcoming auctions actually in this presentation. So invaluable.com is not one I'd come across before doing this presentation, but I've actually found quite a lot of different people on there, and it has people from all over the place. So there's one there from him, and then there's another one. So I'll just click on one of these and you can see the type of thing that it shows. So this is one from him. So he did one called a sea nymph there. So you can see if you link in on that one, a lady without any clothes on. That's actually a beautiful painting. Lovely things in her hair as well. And then another one here. Donkey stir sweepstakes. They look like they've just been cleaning something. So you can see there are lots and lots of different ones here from him. And also there's another company, these are actually an auctioneer company called Druits, and they had a collection of his things on there. So this is one of the fairy paintings that we're talking about here. So this one, a tiptoeing fairy queen, is actually quite mild for some of the things that he's done. And that is a picture of his daughter. So we're going to come to her in a moment. And then it starts getting sort of fairies playing with a white horse and a cow. And then it starts getting a bit more surreal, I would actually describe it as. So goblins and fairies. And that's Florence, that's one of his daughter's ones. And you can see there's lots and lots of different things within that. And this is one of the ones that he's actually quite famous for. This is the stuff dreams are made of. So you can see all the little creatures within this. So I wouldn't even describe these as fairies. I would mini monsters, possibly. So he, I think, was using substances is probably quite a good way of describing it when he was actually doing his painting or the inspiration for his painting. And this is another one, fairies in a bird's nest. So the fairies themselves look all right, but they're surrounded by all these very strange looking little creatures. So the fairy painter. And the fairy painter had a few children, and one of them was Florence. So she was born in 1857, and she merits her own Wikipedia page as well. So this is an image of her. And she worked as a painter and a sculptor. Now, I haven't actually managed to find any examples of her sculptures, but I did find some of her paintings. And these are on a site called Art UK. And that one actually doesn't show a great deal of it, but it gives a little biography of her. So if you're looking for an artist, have a look on a website like this, and it will give you a lot more background information about the person. Now, this one actually told me that she was a sculptress, and it gave all sorts of information in here. So mapping the practice and profession of sculpture in Britain and Ireland. So if you've got anybody in your tree between 1851 and 1951 when they actually practiced, they did their craft, have a look on this website, because I think there's a lot of information here. And basically they've collected it. So they've got information about where she was born, where the work is, who she married, where she exhibited, where she traveled. They've got things like where she lived, exhibitions, all sorts of different things. And it even goes into things like census returns. And then there's sources for different things in there. So that is a really good website, which will give you background information if you've got any sculptors in your family. And again, she's on Invaluable. We won't go to that one. But this one is a different one. This is going over to the other side of the pond. This is actually over in Australia and New Zealand, the Australian and New Zealand Art Sales Digest. So again, we've got a little mini biography of her here, and it also gives us links to other biographical references. So the Find New Zealand Artists websites, Australian prints and printmakers. So if you've got any ancestors over there, have a look at those sort of websites. And these are examples of the different types of images that she's done. And again, this one, oh, that one doesn't work for some reason. We need the links to be updated. So Florence was active over a relatively short period of time, sort of 5-6 years or so. And they traveled quite a lot. They went out to Africa and Australia, and they did images of their travels when they actually settled in different places. And this is a self-portrait of her. And this is one of a child that she did. And you can see her signature at the bottom of the image here. And on the right-hand side, this one is called Red Gum. So this is actually out in Australia. And those both came from invaluable.com. So a different style to her father's, but still, I like the Red Gums one. I think that's rather fun. I'd quite happily have that in my house. So that was Florence. Then we go to John Dudley Forsyth. So this is a different branch of the family. So he was alive from 1874 to 1920. And he's not actually a direct relative. He was married to my second cousin 3 times removed, Gwendolyn Elsie Upcott Gill. Trips off the tongue, that. And he was a guy who did stained glass, and not just stained glass, he did other things. And his works are in museum collections and churches across the UK. So a lot of his work is still in situ. So it's actually a church window or something like that, or it can actually be in a museum somewhere. So ArtNet is another website. And you have to prove you're human. Wait a moment. Cookie preferences. And then we've got a couple of different images here. We've got boats in a calm. And if I wanted to, I could actually purchase a 1-day pass on this website, and that would give me more information on the individual entries here, the actual sale lots. Or if you want to, you can purchase longer ones there. But I've got enough information just to see the overview. And then there's another one called Musica, which is here. And that was sold by Christie's in 1993. So the two or three biggest auctioneers in this country are Christie's and Sotheby's. I worked for Sotheby's back in the 1990s. I did IT and got to see behind the scenes, which was pretty amazing, seeing all the fabulous art that they have. And so Christie's, that was sold for $7,000. So not bad. And that one's called Musica. And then he actually did some windows in Westminster Abbey. So these are the auction lot that is currently for sale with the designs of the windows, an estimate of £200 to £300. And that is a close-up of one of the windows that was actually installed there. So this was for the YMCA and done on there to commemorate Sir George Williams of the YMCA. And if I want to, I can actually go on to the Westminster Abbey website and see the whole image there. It doesn't mention much about him as the designer. It just says he was designed there, but this is about the person it was commemorating. But one of the things it says here is if you want to, you can actually buy that image from the library there. And there's a lot of other things there. So if there's something that particularly takes your eye, have a look through the collection there. They say they've got extensive photo collections and you can buy prints and things from them. And this one is the lot that's for sale at the moment. So this actually does give a bit more information here. So apparently this came from the artist's granddaughter. And you've got information about where this was supposed to be held. And this is a series of images, which is all to do with the windows. And I believe there's some other information in there about his father, who we'll come on to in a moment. But I thought it's lovely actually seeing the designs and then seeing the finished windows in situ as well. And for £200 to £300, I actually think that's pretty good value. So this is what he is mainly known for. This was a window that went into a place called the Baltic Exchange in London. So it commemorates members who were killed during World War One. And I don't know if you can sort of see the scale of this, but this is actually probably about waist height, this glass panel all the way around here. So it was basically taken out of the Baltic Exchange because it was bombed, and it was taken to the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich. And so this is actually, we go on in a moment, I will go back actually, or I might do it this way around, it's probably the easiest way of doing it. It's actually shown as one of the must-see objects in the National Maritime Museum. So you've got the likes of Nelson's coat, Captain Scott's shoes, and various other things here. And then you can see it like that, all illuminated. And then there's more details about it here. And close-ups of the different windows. Behind the half dome is a series of vertical windows which depict the 5 virtues of truth, hope, justice, fortitude, and faith. Established by the Romans, virtues were seen as ideal attributes for humans to aspire to. These were common themes in medieval and Renaissance art and were traditionally depicted as women. That's pretty amazing artwork. And I have to say, when I started looking into all this, I didn't know about that. And so it was amazing to actually find it. And remember I mentioned about Westminster Abbey, you could buy copies of different things. You can actually get a copy of part of that window from Greenwich. So this can be a fine art poster. They've got other things here. If you want to, you can have a postcard, greeting card, things like that. So it's always well worth looking. If you come across a museum or something like that that has an image that you like, whether you can get a copy of it. Because I know I've bought copies of images from the National Portrait Gallery, amongst others. So there's some amazing stuff out there. So we mentioned James Dudley Forsyth. Now we're going to James Forsyth. So we're stepping back a generation. So James is John Dudley's father. He was very well known, and he was the one who was the multi-talented painter, sculptor, furniture designer, gilder, and wood carver. So again, on Art UK, there's some examples of this. So this is a fountain that he did, Perseus and Andromeda, which is in Whitley Court, which is managed by English Heritage, and it gives us some background information here. So he carved the organ case and choir stall at Wells Cathedral, employed as a carver at several cathedrals. And then these are some of the other things that he did. So he did this for the Earl of Dudley, for the Royal Academy of Music. There's fountains here and there. So lots and lots of different things. Monuments to people who died in various different wars. That one's in St. Paul's Cathedral. But for some strange reason, and I don't know why, both he and his son got the freedom of the City of London in the same year, June 1918. Same time, same year. So it says that John Dudley Forsyth was a glazier, member of the Glaziers Society, via, it looks like the Royal College of Arts. And John Forsyth, it doesn't actually give which company he was a member of. Remember, John Dudley Forsyth was a stained glass artist, so that would have come under the Glaziers Society in some way. And this is an example of a bookcase that he did, an inlaid and painted bookcase, which is actually in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. So a lot of these people were very at the top of their craft, and their things were seen as significant and depicted something of the time. So they were saved, and they're held in various different museums. Now we're going back down a generation. Remember I said there were 3 generations in one family? So we've got the father, son, and now we've got the granddaughter, effectively. So he was the son of John Dudley Forsyth, and he was a painter. And I actually managed to find some recent auction results for him. Pardon me, this one is from thesaleroom.com, and this took place in February 2026. And if I click on this one, I can see that it was sold. I would need to subscribe to the price guide, and it tells me that it came from Cornwall, and it was Lay's Auctioneers doing that one. And then a second one. Okay, that one's gone. That was there the other day because that was what it looked like. That must have just happened because that was due to be auctioned in the last couple of days. So you can see examples of the different types of paintings, and they actually put them together, which I think displays things rather nicely there. We're now going on to a completely different part of the family here. This is Darcy Napier Japp, who earned the Military Cross. So that's nothing to do with the painting, but it gives you a little bit of a hint as to where his background might have been. So he was my first cousin 3 times removed, so he's a closer relation in this time. And he was a painter, and he studied at the Slade School of Art. So this image here is the regimental band. So you can see there is a man with a trumpet, I think that is, and it says the RA band is coming. I think that one's rather fun. And he merits his own Wikipedia entry here, and an image actually I took from this page. And it said that he was in the First World War and served in Macedonia. and he gave up painting professionally to farm and breed racehorses. The New English Art Club is another website that's got lots and lots of useful information here. So this has actually got things you can buy on there, information about workshops, exhibitions, and artists themselves. And it gives me a potted biography of him here, saying that he was born in Liverpool, and information there that a lot of it actually came from a Wikipedia entry. But it also gives me a link across here to the Art UK website, so I can see more information on him there and some of the other images that he did as well. Because he came from Liverpool, he was seen as being a son of the town, is sometimes how it's described as. And so I've got a little more information here. So I know more, I actually know the family. I've done research on this side of the family. And he came from quite a wealthy family. And it gives me background information saying he went to Oxford College, St John's in Oxford, and went to work for his father, and then took evening classes. And then he became friends with Stanley Spencer, who is actually a lot more famous as an artist. And then he rose to the rank of major in the Royal Field Artillery. So I've got a lot more information about him here, and it tells me where he was. And then some more information there. And I think that's a self-portrait of him as well. I found a site, the Royal Academy is again a very famous website where they have an annual exhibition where a lot of people take part and they exhibit an image of some sort. And he's actually shown on this one here. I can't remember if he's on this page or not. Let's just find it, see if it's there. Yes, the Royal Field Artillery in Macedonia, Spring 1918, Darcy Japp MC. So this has come from an Imperial War Museum exhibition from 1919 to 1920, that one was. So there's cross references between different museums happening there. And again, he's got an entry in the Tate. Saddleback from Walthwaite. So I think that's Yorkshire, looking at that. And there's a little bit of a biography there. And then it's just got that one image of him. He's also got an entry in the Imperial War Museum. So he did this sketch, this pencil sketch of a gunner in the artillery in 1812, that's dated. I think that must be 1912. So that was Darcy Japp. And then we have Gilbert Aitchison Catley. So I don't know if some of you remember Pumpy and the elephant from ages ago. So he's one of the 5 children who had Pumpy many years ago. Gave them Pumpy to the V&A. So Gilbert was in the army, and he was my first cousin 3 times removed. And my father's actually got one of his paintings. I can't remember which one it is, but I know he's got one. And he painted pictures of people in the army. So that's a self-portrait that he did, and also of horses. And he did something called Quacky Duck. So Quacky Duck is a little duck in a sailor suit. And this is actually done by a company called Halcyon Days, who were quite famous a few decades ago for doing little porcelain enamel boxes of different sorts with attractive things which were commemorative in some way. So you've got something to commemorate the Queen's Golden Jubilee, that sort of thing. So at some point they decided to do a Quacky Duck one. And I believe that Quacky Duck is something similar to the Pumpy and all his little friends who had their little outfits that are actually saved at the V&A that I shared a while ago. Again, Gilbert, I found this on Facebook, the Royal Scots Dragoon Guards Museum. So this is where he's done some various images of different people that he encountered when he was actually in the army in India. Says he was on board the troop ship. He did descriptions and biographies of the officers, and which helped give a feel for their personalities as well. So that's another thing. It's like sometimes painters will actually add extra information, especially if they're not doing things formally, as it were, if it's something that they've chosen to do. And he did lots and lots of different horses. So this is an example of a Christmas card that he did with horses going over a jump there. Looks like they're in training of some sort. And a different Christmas card from the 4th Royal Irish Dragoon Guards on service. Another horse there. That one, Wordsworth, is actually a pub sign. So that would have been outside a pub. I don't know which one it was. I probably could do a bit more information and find out, but that would have been outside and advertising the pub, or used on some sort of advertising material. So what helped me in my research? So I've got a lot of different ones here, so I'm going to zoom through these quite quickly. So we've got the standard Wikipedia, Find a Grave, Google searches, Art UK, as I mentioned, Invaluable, the Tate. Now, one here, Byron's Muse. I haven't shown that one. Let's just go to that one briefly. This was talking about Victorian escapism and John Anster Fitzgerald here. So this gives a bit of background about maybe why he chose to do those sort of things. Dreams, laudanum, local legends and mythology. Shakespeare and Victorian fairy scenes were born. So I think that sort of sums him up quite well there. And just there's a couple of images of the different things that he's done. So he did a lot of painting. Art biographies. So that's the one that shows Florence Harriet Fitzgerald. So again, that's a subscription site here. British and Irish artists of the 20th century. You can get unlimited access for just £5. So that's probably a day or a week. And Bishop Walter Follen, I believe that's her husband, Walter Follen Bishop. Visit Stained Glass. So this is something where they've got information about lots and lots of different stained glass artists. So this is just showing John Dudley Forsyth on there. To go backwards, you can see a complete list of different people. And then if you want to, there's actually a map here, so you can find things dependent on different places. So it could be quite fun, for example, if you're going on holiday somewhere, you could go and see if there's anything to do with any of your relations, ancestors, distant cousins, however you want to describe them, near where you're going to be. Exploring London. So again, this talks about the Baltic Exchange. So it gives us a little bit of background information about it. So it says it subscribed the Blitz intact, but in 1992 it was badly damaged when an IRA bomb significantly damaged the building. So they basically took it out and restored it. Art history research. Slow. So you've got lots and lots of different things on here. So different profiles of different artists and things like that, biographical stuff. Worth checking that one out. Artist biographies. So yes, the subscription website, 24 hours is £5, a month is £10. So you might as well have a month at that rate. Christie's, the company of glass sellers. So I mentioned that John Dudley Forsyth was a member of the Glaziers Company. That is also known as the Company of Glass Sellers. And these are where the archives are actually available for this particular company. So it's one of the London livery companies. So if you wanted to practice, you had to be a member of a livery company, which ensured that you were doing things correctly to the proper standards, etc., etc. So that's just an idea of the glass sellers archives there. London city directory. So if you've got ancestry, you can have a look on here and see if there's anybody in your family that is actually listed in a city directory in London between this period. Freedom of the City of London. You can actually see via ancestry who was granted a freedom of the City of London here. And you can also see register of apprenticeships as well there, apprentices' indentures. That's where they actually enter into an agreement to be an apprentice for a period of years and to learn their trade, and the master will look after them, etc. Carrying on, then the Furniture History Society. So this is where I got the image of the wonderful bookcase writing desk there. So it talks about a history of him, says where this was actually exhibited, at the Architectural Exhibition in 1861, the International Exhibition in London in 1862, and it was offered for sale at £80, to give you an idea about what people paid for things like that. And that's a screen that he did. Again, that's from the Victoria and Albert Museum. Mapping sculpture, we looked at that one earlier. Public Statues and Sculptures Association. So this is an entry for James Forsyth on there. So it's got the different things in there. So it says his father was Adam Forsyth, a mason, elder brother of William Forsyth, also a sculptor. So obviously a very, very talented family there. And it tells more details about some of the different places that he did his work. Newspapers.com. That can be useful for different things here. So I found an exhibition here saying that Darcy Japp was being shown in the Manchester City Art Gallery in 1929. The New English Art Club. Now, did we do that one? Yes, we did that one. Liverpool Footprints, we've done that one. Slade. So the Slade is one of the foremost art schools. So again, you may be able to find out about people who were students at that point. You'd need to contact their archives and ask them. They've got some of the very famous people actually mentioned here. The Royal Academy Archive, I tried using this, and there isn't a great deal on there. There's a series of letters and things. There's an online search feature where you can look through some of the different information that's on there, but that's relating more to artworks rather than the people who created them. But it's worthwhile having a look. Leys Auctioneers, the sale room. And then I did find a couple of books that I thought were quite interesting. However, they're not easy to get a hold of. I managed to find a copy of this, and it's called The Fine Art of Tracing Your Artist Ancestors. But it was published back in the early 2000s, and it basically offered a service whereby they would find out more about an person for you, the artist. But it seems to obviously have gone out of business now. But it did have a list of different potential things. So, for example, you've got the Sainsbury Centre for Visual Arts in Norwich, the Salford Museum, Scottish National Gallery of Modern Art in there, and different things. So if you can get hold of a copy and it's something you're interested in, I managed to find one copy online. There may be others. Stained glass marks and monograms. Again, that's not easy to find. I didn't actually manage to source a copy of it. So if it's an area that interests you, have a look and see if there is anything available. Some of these things you can actually sort of keep, for example, a Google search or a search on one of the old websites, such as Abe Books and things like that. So if these things do come up, you can get them. And another one, Victorian and Edwardian stained glass by Marta Galecki. So that may be out of print at the moment. So that's it for today. Any questions?
Wow, Emma. I think, one of the things that comes to mind from this is how for artists, unlike mere mortals, regular people, the product of their work, of their life's work, will be objects, whether it's a painting, a drawing, stained glass, or whatever, where the story about the person is part of the value of the thing. So in that sense, it's very different in terms of what you might find about them, right?
Mm. So I was amazed actually with some of those websites, how much detail you could find out online. So some of the biographical details, I mean, it says where they lived, the different censuses and things like that. And that was on the sculptural one, I think, if I remember rightly. And I wouldn't have expected a website like that to go into that much detail. So it's amazing what's actually out there.
Well, when you, I think I've mentioned before, my big sister is an artist and has been a practicing professional artist for decades now. So I didn't even know to look. She's got a Wikipedia page. I'm like, oh. But
Start with a Google search, Wikipedia,
yeah,
and things like that, and then see where it
right.
takes you. I mean, I found the majority of these sites via Google searches, and then just went looking. And sometimes you go from one site which says go to this site, they've got more information here, and you just carry on looking.
It dawns on me that in the future, since I mean, Wikipedia pages have only been around, any kind of web page has only been around for about 30 years, but any kind of artist that you knew even 20 years ago, go look in the Wayback Machine, because a
Mm.
practicing artist is going to have their own website. They are going to be curating their own website. But presumably, if they are a practicing artist, they know this gig, how this works. And if they haven't had their retrospective and all the big books published about them, then certainly their website should be archived to the Internet Archive, to
Yeah.
someone like Diebenkorn or Rothko, or names that we will know from their work in the 50s, and they will be very heavily collected. And certainly all the big books, but also the ordinary sorts of family background that a family member would be interested in.
And you mentioned the Wayback Machine, the book the Fine Art of Tracing Your Artist's Ancestors by Graham Whitehall. I actually had a look to see if I could find the website, because the website doesn't exist anymore, but I did manage to find it on the Wayback Machine. So that's how I know that they offered this service where they would actually try and identify people, or find out more
Yeah.
about people. Yeah, tracking down their artist forebears, so they say.
Yeah, fascinating. And again, more modern artists, you often find documentaries or films and TV
Mm-hmm.
shows and things like that that they will have been part of, which makes
I
me
would say
think,
YouTube as well. I mean, I didn't look at YouTube at all,
yeah,
but for modern artists and things, definitely check out YouTube, see what people have put on there.
makes me think about archives of, Instagram and other feeds like that. To me, I talk about that a lot with respect to social media as a whole, and the limits that you have on the materials that you might post there, your own feed that you might do there, because you have no control over it unless you're archiving it manually. But boy, that's a reminder of how important that is, because the conversations that happen, it's not just the posts, it's the conversations that follow. Anyone else? Thoughts? Come on in, Bill. Bill,
Yeah.
formerly with the Metropolitan Museum of Art, might have a few
Well,
things to say.
I don't know. I was with MoMA,
Oh,
not the Met,
sorry.
but that's I thought it was interesting that you had worked at the Tate. I
Sotheby's.
I briefly worked on a project with the Tate Modern. That was a project that we were trying to get off the ground. It never did. It's called Project Muse. But it was interesting working with them and learning about them. It was about the time that they had just moved into um, their new
The
old
old power
building.
station. Yeah.
Yeah, the power station. Yeah, and um, what was funny was we were on uh, a video conference, and I, you know, was very jealous of them because uh, could look out the window of the conference room they were in. I said, "Is that St. Paul's behind you?" And
Yep.
yeah, that was the view they had from their conference room.
Yeah. Straight across
Yeah,
the Millennium Bridge.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I uh, I was basically below ground for 20 years at MoMA, so I had no view.
No,
But
no.
no, that was interesting seeing uh, the artists that you're able to find in your family.
Mm.
Um,
I think it's always surprising when you start looking what you'll
yeah,
discover. Like
yeah,
I knew of Gilbert. He was the one at the end because of the Pumpy thing years ago. But the other ones, it's like, who's Darcy Japp? And it's like, okay, start digging a bit more. And it's like, because I found someone was named after Darcy Japp. It's like, well, who's Darcy Japp then? And started looking, and sort of you
yeah,
question things, and then you start thinking, well, this person's interesting. And then you say, oh, their father was as well, or their son was, and it's like, what did they do? And so it grows.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I'm going to have to check now with a friend of mine up in Ottawa who's an artist. I suspect that he was heavily influenced by Ferry Fitzgerald because he does all these really fantastic paintings, and I've got one of his lithographs. Um, it was kind of a skeleton of St. Pancras with little bitty nuns and fairies and dragons, just all over the place. And he does all sorts of art like that, and it makes a really good living too. But he's an interesting fellow. He calls himself Bat Boy, but spelled Bhat, but he has little ears in his hair. um, very eccentric, and his artwork is too. But has done a lot of major exhibitions. Um, and actually was born in London and then was brought to Canada as a baby, but has gone back and forth his entire life. But looking at your ancestors' work, there are some similarities there. So I would not be surprised if it was an influence.
Yeah, I mean, some of his stuff is lovely, and other stuff you just think, where did the
Yeah.
inspiration for it? Yeah.
Well, there's a
No,
lot
well-
of things, particularly particularly more modern things, that it may take decades before the rest of us mere mortals kind of catch up with where they were going or what they were doing. But it's a reminder that with, family members whose work is recognized, little bits of ephemera, birthday cards, and hand-drawn pieces that they have shared within the family can become quite precious and meaningful for the direct family connection. And a reminder that the higher level of preservation, attention to preservation that should be applied to materials like these.
Yeah.
I mean, not everything we produce is worthy of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, we did a retrospective of Tim Burton's work.
A great example.
And he did drawings and paintings that went along with all of his movies.
Mm-hmm.
So so all those weird characters he come up with, he had drawn or painted first. It was fascinating, a little disturbing.
Yeah. And then there's folks like Andy Warhol or somebody whose work, later, sure, but early on, did people appreciate and understand what he was doing and preserve and protect the materials. I have another question for you, Emma. You worked at Sotheby's, right?
Sotheby's, yeah.
Sotheby's, and you mentioned Christie's in here, but you didn't mention Sotheby's. Is there an insight about that, or was that just
that is purely because the results that came up showed Christie's rather than Sotheby's. If they'd shown Sotheby's, I would have included them. So, yeah. And it's like I spent 18 months or so working for Sotheby's, and I did the IT for various different exhibitions or sales. And so I looked after Italy. So I did ones in Milan, and I looked after Scotland. So I went up and did one at Gleneagles. I did one at the Royal Scottish Automobile Club in Glasgow. And I think and I did one at outside Hopetoun House outside Edinburgh. So I would do all the IT, and you get to speak to the experts. So it's like the experts on Scottish paintings and things like that. Some of them were lovely and friendly and helpful. Others maybe not quite so, but it just depended what you did. But if you were interested and showed a genuine interest, I can remember speaking with a Scottish painter expert. I can't remember his name, but he would say, "Why do you like that?" And it's just making me appreciate the paintings more. And it's like sort of not just seeing the painting, but sort of getting you to ask more questions about it.
Yeah. It's really it's a breathtaking step that like opens doors to see things you never saw before.
Well, that was one of the fun things about working at MoMA, was when we did get to interact with the with some of the artists. Had lunch one day with John Waters, and it was a group of us, and um, someone asked him how his parents reacted when he came out as gay, and he said, "Oh, when I told them, they thought it was going to be something so much worse." Yeah, I could see that. But no, I got a chance to meet some
Yeah.
very interesting people. Got to worked with Bjork on a show we did of her work.
Wow.
Got to see the swan dress, which we had it in the show. But she was weird.
But aren't artists, a lot of them anyhow, they have something different about them, don't
Well,
they,
yeah,
that allows their brains to create things that a lot of us would never think of doing or wouldn't
yeah,
be capable of doing.
yeah. Well,
And I
you know,
think our culture grants, at a certain level of talent, our culture grants them a freedom that constrains other people.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think that is important. I say as little sister to an artist. I
yeah,
think that is really important. But at the same time, um, it's good to understand where that freedom comes from.
yeah,
It's been
It's interesting
granted.
to see if you start looking back through your family history. It's like, I personally don't really have any talent for painting or anything like that. My aunt did quite a lot of painting, and I've got quite a few of hers on the walls, and some are framed and some are just in the cupboard and things like that. And she did lots of pictures of plants, flowers, that sort of thing, which I like. And so I've got those around me. But I wouldn't say that anybody, particularly within our family, has inherited any creative genes in that way. However, her son woodwork and carpentry and things like that. So it can obviously
mhm,
go in different directions, can't it? And my father's very practical and has always been able to make everything. And so there's all sorts of different things like that. So an artist is a very open
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
term, isn't it? And sort of it
Yeah.
can go from, well, what makes one person who's a stained glass artist and then the person who follows them is a sculptor or a painter or something? As you say, I think it's having the freedom and being surrounded by things that are different in some way, potentially.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a lot of nature nurture blends. And today we understand so much more about genetics, and then there's so much more we don't understand about genetics.
yeah,
Things like very often patterns of things like dyslexia are often parallel to extraordinary physical skills, the three-dimensional mechanical skills. And I'm sure it's just an observation of family members, but trying to learn how these kinds of patterns, or left-handedness, where past educational systems might have tried to beat that out of somebody, when in fact that is the part of the brain to be able to use both parts of the brain to really think of things that other people wouldn't, thinking outside of the box. um, I've always tended to think that it's about not crushing it. Don't crush it early, because it was there. And the problem is so many have already learned to just don't try it. Don't try it. Don't go there. You can't. You can't.
That's
You
why I
can't.
think it's so important to try and find out about the people who came before you and think about medical stuff. Great, so you know that sort of history, but also sort of what they did, their professions, if they changed careers, what hobbies they had, that sort of thing, just to see what comes down and give
Yeah,
inspiration for future generations.
yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point. And it's one of the great points about why people study family history, in the sense that learning that that it's possible to do these things, that you have it in you. It's okay. If the people around you give you the freedom to do it, or even that you can do it late in life, it's okay. I try
And
never
you
to
can
say
just
I
try.
can't. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's like somebody's done something before and have a go.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
I'm never going to be the world's best painter or anything, but occasionally I enjoy doing a little bit of tinkering. I'm much
As
better
a
with squares and drawing and things like that. I always used to want to be an architect when I was young, but that never happened.
I'm as a little sister to an artist, I feel like I learned young the difference between skill and talent. I could learn skills, but she had the talent, and that's okay. I have other talents, and but the skills can be very useful. How to handle an X-Acto knife.
Right. Without cutting your finger off. Yeah.
Exactly. Or how to preserve the work, right? Don't waste a lot of energy on newsprint because it's going to decay. And that may be totally fine if you're just slopping paint on the sides and it doesn't matter. But if you're doing something that could be a sketch that might itself be powerful, do it on acid-free paper, for God's sake.
My mom used to do in chalk scenery and things like that. Yeah.
Do you have her pieces?
I know I don't have anything.
Oh.
I do not. I mean, she didn't have a lot of time to do it, but no, we had a couple at home, but I don't know who got them. Somebody else in the family, obviously. But that used to be something. I mean, I don't have that kind of talent. I couldn't paint a picture if I tried, but I have I can knit and things like that.
Yeah.
So creativity takes lots of different forms, doesn't it?
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But to
I
your
like
point,
stained glass too. Like stained glass. My husband's sister does stained glass, and she's made some nice things. Yeah.
There you go. And being able to talk about those things that they did can really be empowering to grandchildren and great grandchildren to see what someone in their own family actually did. You said your mom.
Yeah, mom.
She may have been, constrained by her environment as to what was acceptable for her to do.
Sure.
And wow, those are sweet stories, and how freeing it is. Thank you so much, Emma. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up?
I haven't decided at all. I've been so involved in doing this one. April, we're not doing one. So as we said, we're at the anniversary in May. So I haven't quite decided. So we did a roundup in January. So I'm not going to do anything like that again. So I'm just going to have a little think about what subject I want to actually do.
Insider tip: send her suggestions.
Yeah, do. If there's something that you're interested in, if there's something you said, have you got any X in your family?
Yeah.
Well, probably, given that I've got most things, it seems like.
Yeah.
There you go. And the April slot, I've come to look at my calendar in terms of slots. So I have a special program already set for the Emma slot in April. So stay tuned for news on that. It's as a hint, it's someone you all already know, talking about something very exciting and new that she is working on. So stay tuned for the details within the next couple of weeks. But we've already picked out the slot and are all ready to make something of it. I don't know that it'll be worthy, but we will try.
I'm sure it will.
I'm sure it will as well. Yes.
And don't worry, Emma, you can watch it as a recording. We won't take attendance. Well, thank you everyone for joining, for your enthusiasm and engagement to take this topic once more. I do always enjoy these little frolics. And sometimes it's with fairies into dark places, but we understand you give us a lifeline to get out. And as always, watch for the recording. And I always appreciate the feedback and insights for those of you who watch this as a recording. So with that, let me just stop the recording. And if you all want to stay on, that's okay too.